Thanks for joining us this evening on the Women's National League show with myself, Alanna and finalwhistle.ie. We've lots to come for you in the next while. We'll have an interview with Athlone Town's Laurie Ryan about her time at Athlone Town, their 3-game win streak, and also her recovery process and how she balances all with the GA. And we'll also have a look back on the weekend's action before we preview what's to come this weekend. So stay tuned anyways, and we'll get into it with Breifne. Now, we had some big results over the weekend and some monumental ones to come too, but we'll start by looking back for a review of the action. Which one stood out to you, Breifne?
Listen, it was a really, really weird weekend. Kind of the top teams played the bottom teams, or at least what you perceive to be the bottom teams. Some fairly heavy defeats for teams that they might take a couple of weeks to get over. I know I saw most of the games over the weekend because they were nicely staggered out, but I think it was a big defeat for Sligo. I don't think they'll be too happy with their performance in Athlone. We might talk about whether all the goals were valid or not, but the final result was 5-0. So real big statement of intent from Athlone in terms of where they see themselves. They've been one of the perennial, I don't think it'll be too upset when we call them kind of one of the strugglers over the last few years. They really have struggled to get that momentum going and to win back-to-back games. And as you mentioned in the intro, and I'm sure you chatted to Laurie about as well when you spoke to her earlier, is that those 3 games that they've won on the bounce now. It's the first time they've won more than one in a row since they joined the league. And I think that's a big statement. Were they a bit lucky with some of the fixtures that came together to give them that opportunity? Possibly, but they took it, and that's super important for teams when they are given that little bit of a lull, when they're not playing the shells of the Peamount, they're playing teams in and around them or maybe a little bit below them, to actually go and take those 3 points home consistently week after week after week. So they'll be really happy with that. And I think Sligo will be disappointed, probably more so by the fact that some of the key players for them would arguably be from Sligo's gene pool. You know, the likes of Muireann Devaney, Roisin Malloy, Kelsey Monroe, hugely involved through the whole weekend, or through the whole, I suppose, they're coming through the ranks at Sligo, and they were involved in the game at the weekend heavily. Second goal, very obviously a handball, but everybody missed it. I'd say the only person who realised that it happened was Kelly herself. I think it was Kelly Brennan who got the goal, but she's probably the only person on the pitch who knew it came off her hand, because the ref didn't see it, supporters didn't see it, none of the Sligo players even objected or put up a protest. So she got away with it. They scored another one literally a minute later. In fact, I was repeating it to watch it back because I suspected the handball, and I missed the third goal, had to go and look for the third goal afterwards. So all of a sudden they're 3-0 down, and game was effectively over at that stage. And Athlone have never really been in that position since they came into the league a couple of years ago. So they'll be really, really happy with that. I'm sure we'll hear loads about that from Laurie at the weekend. Game for me, probably Galway-Wexford was probably my highlight of the weekend. And I think just the way it happened, Galway maybe a little bit fortuitous to get the first goal. You'd probably argue that there might have been a free out given at some stage, because they just looked like an absolute melee from a corner. A load of players on the ground. Ball ends up in the back of the net. Ref gives it. Galway won't complain. But I think Wexford probably could feel a bit hard done by for not getting a free out in that instance. And then I suppose Wexford had most of the possession. Really good piece of work, particularly for their first goal. Just when chasing a lost cause, ball hadn't quite crossed the line. She nicks it back in, and it's a goal, and they're level before they took the lead a couple of minutes later. And I suppose it was the way that it was won in the end. And boy, did Julianne Russell look happy when she scored that screamer. Took a bit of a deflection, probably the difference between it being saved and hitting the back of the net. But again, no more than the first one. Galway won't care. It's a good result against one of the perceived stronger sides in the league, although Wexford have had a couple of dodgy results in recent weeks, but they'll be happy enough, I think, Galway to have got that point from Wexford. How good were Bows? Bows were very impressive on Saturday. You know, Peamount, we're seeing a bit of a blip from Peamount. They got a bit of a reprieve when Shells lost last week, and people kind of thought maybe this is Peamount's opportunity to press ahead and stay at the top of the table. But they've kind of blown it a little bit at the weekend, and they'll be happy enough to have got a point out, all things considered. But it's points drop for Peas rather than a point gain or 1 point gain. It's definitely a case of 2 points drop, because Peamount should be beating teams at this level that Bows are at. I think Bows have improved. They're vastly superior to where they were last year, despite what the league table says. I wouldn't mind that too much. I think they're a better side than possibly one or even two of the clubs above them. I think Bows are probably around the same place as Athlone in terms of ability, in my opinion. But Athlone have 13 points, Bows only have 6. So the table's a bit misleading. I think a bit of bad form from Bows, but I think they have a little bit of quality this year. Sinead Taylor, lethal inside the box if the ball comes to feet. And she's added a different dimension to the side. Ciara Bates-Crosby as well on the wing has created a lot of stuff. And if they can really get that kind of fulcrum in midfield to click, I think we'll see a bit of a resurgence from Bows in the second, third of the season over the next couple of weeks. And I'm really excited about what they might do. I see them, they're currently 8th in the table, albeit, again, they're behind Sligo because of that result. PMAT earlier in the season, the Sligo got the walkover for them, 3 points. So if that result hadn't been overturned on the field of play, effectively, they'd be in 7th in the table. I think that's probably about where they are. Maybe 6th, 5th would be a really, really good result for Bows, I think, this season. I think they'd take that. I think they'd be quite happy with that as well. Finally, the other 2 games, Shells and, well, what can you say about the other 2 games? Shells 5-0 and DLR 6-0 over Treaty and Cork, respectively. The Munster side's really struggling.
Should a conversation be had there, maybe, Breifne, that maybe there isn't room for 2 teams in Munster? Like, there's been glimpses of promise from both of them, but just neither side really performing to maybe the level they would have expected to in the Women's National League.
No, I don't buy that. And in fact, I'd actually make the opposite argument. I think there's maybe a need for more teams in Munster. I think there's more teams required in the league. There's another division required in the league. And maybe rather than one division of 10, I think we should be looking maybe for 2 divisions of 8. Now, who actually would make up, which of the current 10 would make up that 8? That's open for debate. That should be decided based on maybe geography, but also based on standards of coaching and facilities and everything that brings with it as well in terms of licensing. We have it in the men's. We really should have it in the women's as well. Like we saw last weekend, I know we covered the games here on Final Whistle, and you're involved in that teamwork on Saturdays. And I think it might even have been your game at the weekend, just trying to find a team, because the stream isn't 100% right in terms of the information they give out. Sometimes there's commentary. That's not fair. Sometimes there's no commentary, or there's very poor commentary, and the teams aren't announced maybe in the manner we'd hope to get them. Social media, most clubs are great. 90% of the time, it's fantastic. But when it's just non-existent, and it's non-existent for the whole 90 minutes. The whole match day can be just nothing. If a team is trapped, maybe if it's a long trip away and the relevant official isn't traveling who does that, it just gets ignored. And I think at the level that clubs are aspiring to, that's not good enough anymore. And I think clubs really need to get themselves sorted off the pitch. And I think that needs to be done. And maybe that's where Treaty and Cork are struggling, because I don't believe the talent isn't there. You only have to look around the league to see some of the names and some of the faces that are cropping up in international squads. And there's plenty of Cork and Limerick representation there, particularly Cork. You look at Denise O'Sullivan, I know she hasn't played in the league for many, many years. But these players are being developed in the league. There's plenty of players in both teams that we're looking at international level, under 16. I know we've talked about Amy Madden on the show a lot. There's plenty more like her coming through in Cork, in Limerick. I would argue there's a room for a case of a team in Waterford. I know Wexford kind of covered that a little bit. But Benfica back in the day were a very, very competitive side at national level, competing for FAI Women's Cups back in the 90s and noughties. And were always a tough task to go down to Waterford and take them on. They were effectively the Waterford FC of the women's game. Lifford has kind of been subsumed. I know you spoke to Laurie in the pre-record earlier, and she spoke about being at Lifford. They've been very active, but Treaty covers that general area, that Ennis kind of South Clare area, so they don't need another team there. But there's maybe an argument for a team in Kerry. You know, like there's plenty of facilities down there. There's been a few players out of Kerry over the years as well, so there's plenty, and the IT are very active in the colleges game.
Cove Ramblers as well are developing at the underage level too.
Well, Cove have a stated ambition to be in the Women's National League in the near future. I don't think it's less teams anywhere we need. I think the more teams we can have involved in the senior game, not necessarily in the top division, but I'd love to see a second tier in there, even if it meant a 6 or an 8 team Premier Division and a 6 or an 8 team second division. Even if it started together, you play one round and then separate. You know, we had something like that a couple of years ago in the Women's National League. I think the Women's All-Ireland Rugby League did something similar this year. And where there was a lot of hammerings in the rugby, for example, in the season just gone, we would see maybe 60-0, 70-0 results in the initial round of games. Every team played each other once. When we got to the second section where the top 4 played each other and the bottom 6 played each other, I don't think there was a game that was separated by more than 10 or 15 points. All the games were competitive, and definitely in the top 4, a lot of them came down to a single score game. So it was exciting. You didn't know who was going to win every week. There were surprises, but it was super competitive. And I think that's what's important, is that these players, nobody enjoys going out getting beat 5-6-0. And it's not even that enjoyable to win 5 or 6-0. Like once you've scored the first 2 or 3, you know the game is over. It's not enjoyable anymore. It's like flogging a dead horse. You'd actually be better off from a club point of view or a coaching point of view. I know I was involved with UCD back in the day, and there was times we'd go out and score double figures, and really was no benefit to anyone. We would rather have had a training session because it was more competitive. So the same applies here. I think teams need to be given time to grow. Treaty have lost a lot of players in the last few years. Since they lost David, name escapes me off the top of my head now, David Rooney, as their manager 2 years ago, they've struggled to kind of keep that little bit of momentum that was there. They weren't fantastic under David, but they were definitely better than they are now. And I think it's a big loss to have people of that caliber moving away from the women's game. And I think they've struggled with some of the players they've lost. They've lost a lot of girls to Cork. They've lost some to Athlone. They've lost some to Galway. And it's not good for the club that they're losing players like that. So I don't know what the answer is in the short term, but I think it needs to be some sort of an evaluation of what's in it for the girls, because we talked off air about how you can't solve the same problems in women's football with the same techniques or the same solutions that work in men's football. In the League of Ireland, if there's a problem, generally the answer is money. If you need a new centre forward or you need a new goalkeeper, it's a wage, it's a budget, that's the biggest issue. The players are kind of there. Now, you might be competing for players in certain places, but that's every sport. But it's a budget issue when it comes to the men's side of the thing. With the women's, nobody's getting paid. And it's an amateur league. And I think there's other factors at play. It's where am I working? Where am I studying? Where am I living? That's important. Where do my friends play? Do I like the atmosphere in the dressing room? Guys will get on and get in and do it. They won't care. They want to play at the highest standard possible. Girls, while they're competitive and when they're in that dressing room, they give it 110%. They absolutely will make decisions based on how they feel about the environment that they're going to be in. And I think that's maybe, and I'm not saying this is the case, I don't know enough about either of the clubs and the setups that are down there at the moment, but it's usually a factor when you see teams struggling, is that maybe the environment isn't quite right. And sometimes people who are familiar with the men's environment, say, for example, like in Treaty and Cork, and there are other examples around the country where it doesn't affect them, so it's less of an issue there, but maybe this is the factor, but just that they come in and they have that kind of dynamic where it's treated like a men's game, or it's not quite handled the way it should be. And I suppose I think I said this in the podcast a few weeks ago when I was on with you. I did my UEFA B license back in the dark ages, 2007. I think I did my UEFA B license, and I had a really good coach on the license called Alfie Wiley. He was the Northern Ireland women's manager at the time, and was for a decade afterwards. And his whole mantra was, coach them like boys, treat them like girls. And it's when you do that and you come into coaching women's sport like that, it gives you that kind of license to build that relationship with the girls. And they'll do it, they'll run through brick walls for you if they know why they've been asked to do it, and if they feel like it's going to be appreciated. Whereas with guys, you can play the hairdryer treatment at times and pull out the shouting at them at halftime, and maybe a bit of bad language creeps into team talks and stuff. Girls don't react well to that in general. Now, I'm not going to get myself into trouble by saying something about generalization. Girls, I think they're equal to.
I think as well, it's a lot kind of the younger generation coming up, especially boys or girls, seem to kind of react that kind of way in general. I think now coming up, they don't really necessarily want to, as you say, get the hairdryer treatment. They kind of react better maybe to the arm around the shoulder than the telling them this was awful, this was good, you know, kind of way.
Yeah, I am thinking that sometimes they absolutely need a bit of the hairdryer treatment, but
Yeah.
they don't respond well to it. And I think you have to adapt as coaches, as officials within the club, and see what you're actually offering. And it's not just about financial situations, although that is a factor in certain places, but it's about that environment. It's about like how much gear did they get? Because knowing you have enough gear that you're not worrying about laundry, or you're not worrying about like having to have something a Friday night and then again for a Saturday morning, and having to get home and do laundry and have it clean, and it messes things up. Whereas if you know you've got 2 or 3 t-shirts with the club logo on it and you got one for training during the week and or 2 for training during the week and 1 for the weekend, and you're not worrying about the minutia of that, it takes an awful lot of stress off. And sometimes for penny pinching purposes, or maybe just they don't have the resources, we undervalue and underappreciate and under-resource these kind of teams. And I think it's about like setting the bar and keeping it at a certain level, and I think players respond to that. And so no, to answer your original question, absolutely not. I don't think there's a case for only one team in Munster. I think it's crazy. Cork County has a population of almost 500,000 people. The rest of Munster probably has something similar, maybe 300,000 or 400,000. So no, do I think that there's a team in Limerick that can compete at National League level? Absolutely. The question is, no more than Sligo. We mentioned about 3 or 4 of their players playing across the league. Like there's 1 or 2 in Galway that Sligo could definitely make an argument that they could compete for them in terms of geography. Limerick definitely, Treaty definitely in Limerick. Laurie Ryan, you could argue, should be playing with Treaty. There are others. We know who they are. They're littered all around the league, and these are the kind of players that they should be looking to bring back. But they have to make it attractive to them. They have to be relatively competitive, or at least show that they've signs of wanting to become competitive. Not wanting it is unfair, but of moving in the direction of becoming competitive. At the moment, Cork are slipping back. Treaty have definitely slipped back. I would worry about the quality for them this season, but listen, 1 or 2 players could be the difference, and we could see them mid-table last year. 2 years ago, Bows really, really struggled. Look where they are now. Athlone the same. Athlone barely won a game the first season they were in the league, and now they're 4th place in the league table. Will they stay there? Probably not. They're 5th rank. Will they stay there? Probably not though. But they'll be there thereabouts. I think Athlone and Bows for me will be the 2 teams, and Galway that will probably finish 5th, 6th, and 7th. Sligo look like they'll finish 8th, and then Cork and Treaty just a little bit of a distance behind, unfortunately. That being said, I know Sligo won down in Cork a couple of weeks ago, 2-1. I called it a smash and grab the last time we were on. I think it was. I think Cork are probably a stronger outfit than Sligo on their given day. Sligo just outperformed them a couple of weeks ago. I think Sligo probably have enough points already built up that it will take a huge effort from Cork to overtake them. So that's why I put Sligo maybe 8th. But I think in terms of players available to them, I don't think there's much in it between them. Treaty a little bit off, unfortunately for them.
Yeah, definitely. Well, good stuff anyways, Breifne. We'll have to see how all of that develops in the long term, and we'll catch up with you again at the end of the show, maybe to discuss as well more so, let's say, the top of the table and how they're kind of ending up and who's dropping points, and can we expect them to get back into it. But all ahead of us anyways. We'll leave you now though with Laurie Ryan, who I caught up with earlier. Now, I'm delighted to be joined by Athlone Town's Laurie Ryan. First of all, thanks for joining us, Laurie, but you're on a great run of games with Athlone there.
Yeah, we're actually going really well at the minute, and I suppose it's a big buzz for the team to be getting results, and I think the first time we've won 3 matches in a row, it's fantastic as well, and just kind of makes it a bit easier to be going training all the time.
Yeah, a bit of a nicer atmosphere, I'm sure. But as you say, yeah, the first time the club has got the 3 wins there, and Tommy Hewitt had remarked a few weeks back that was a real goal of his to get you guys on the successive wins, because he was saying it's a testament to how much you've improved. What is it you think that's clicked with you guys so far this year?
I think a big thing that I've probably been saying for a long time is that we kept a lot of girls from last year. I suppose we all saw the potential that was there when we finished out the last round of games last year, and getting that buy-in from everyone. And I suppose you can't beat that, playing together all the time, week in, week out. And it's definitely standing to us now as we're starting to get results. We're getting used to each other. We're becoming a closer team. And even new girls coming in, I suppose they're becoming part of it quicker because we're all so close together. So I think that's had a massive part to play in where we have become and where we are now.
Definitely, and it gives a platform you can build on as well, I guess. But he had mentioned that as well, like maybe that this would be a career highlight for him so far. What would you do you think yours would be so far in a WNL jersey, or what would it be the main goal in the future?
I think like for me, I was coming in last year not really knowing much about the National League. So to get the 3 wins on the bounce is massive. And I think for me, just to see the progression in the team from where we were this time last year has been massive. Like as you get older, like you start to see things like that more than just winning as well. And that's massive for me to see how much every girl on the squad has come on. And like we made substitutions in all the games we've played, and they've been massive as well. And it's just brilliant to see how girls are improving it week in and week out, and how we can really see the team coming together.
And obviously, Laurie, there's a lot of talk about how much like you guys are on a roll at the minute and how much you've improved, as you say, even just since last year. Do you think you guys have been somewhat underestimated? Like, did you think you had this in you anyways, and it just wasn't really coming off for you on the pitch? Like,
yeah, I think we have belief within the squad that we're able to go with anyone on the day, and I think maybe we like the underdogs tag. I think it kind of can be a bit easier to have that sometimes. But we always believed that we had these results in us, and we knew if we kept performing the way we had started at the preseason this year, that eventually like we'd get the results. But same token, like last year we felt we had good performances and didn't get results. So it was a massive thing that we needed to learn how to win. And I think you can't beat winning, and once you start, I think it becomes a habit, and hopefully like we can keep pushing on and trying to get results now.
And it's brilliant for the league too in that manner, given, you know, it is getting so competitive. I think nearly in every section of the table, there's like, you actually can't call it anymore, you know, kind of way. But as you touched on there, you know, a big problem you guys were facing was retaining the players that you were developing over the years. And obviously you have a lot of GA players in the ranks, including yourself. How do you kind of factor it all in? Like, do you find they're kind of conducive to each other?
I suppose it comes down to managing yourself. Like I know myself that I'd be on the phone a lot and like, well, I've a match this day, I'm training this day. But you need understanding and communication in the management. Like I need Tommy to know that if I go to him and say, well, I can't go training this Tuesday because I'm going with Claire, that he trusts and believes that I'm actually going with Claire and I'm not going to be sitting at home doing nothing. And I think that's one of the biggest things, especially with football for me. Like I'm away from home, I'm in Athlone. So for them, they know I'm training with Athlone all the time, and then I come home on the weekends to train with them. So there is a lot of trust there. It can be hard. Like I know myself personally, I do find it hard not being able to make everything, and that's probably one of the hardest things. Is like I'm never going to make every training session for football or soccer all the time, and you just have to have allowances there that like you'll make up for it when you are there, and you will give 100%. And I think that's the biggest thing for me, like, is you get used to it and managing your body as well. Like I can turn around to both managers and say, look, I actually don't think I can train tonight, I'm feeling a bit tired. And they have to believe you in that sense as well.
Yeah, because I found that even from talking to Tommy, like you're saying there, the open communication between the two of you was something very refreshing. I think that a lot of managers could maybe adopt, because the other way often there's kind of this mindset that it's one or the other, but like you're doing both. And he was mentioning you were clocking up like, I think it was like 10K or something in some matches. Like, how do you recover from that? Because it is so full on and you're doing them both. Like, I think you're a sports science lecturer as well. You might have all the tips and tricks there, do you?
Oh, I don't know about that. I think like you do pick up things as you go older, and I suppose I'd be a big thing about nutrition, and I'd always be eating like straight after my games for recovery, and even sometimes I don't want to be eating, like, and I know I need to. So I'd be sitting down like forcing myself to have a dinner at, like, I suppose at Athlone as well, where we've such a late kickoff sometimes, and I'd be going to play a match the next day that I'm like forcing food into me before going to bed and just hoping that I get a good night's sleep. Like I think there's a lot of double weekends coming up for me, and I probably had a bit of practice last year with my club. I used to play soccer every Saturday, and then we'd go into club games every Sunday. So you learn a lot very quickly when you're feeling a bit tired. But it is tough. Like I am probably lucky in my job as well that I have a bit of flexibility, and like I can go recover a bit more and do things like that, which really does stand to me. But yeah, it is looking after yourself, and I think for me the food is the biggest thing, and actually just getting good sleep. They're the kind of two things I always try to focus on to get myself through the weekends when I have double games or double trainings.
Yeah, because wow, like looking on, it looks very, very full on altogether. I don't know how you do it, but a credit to you anyways. But yeah, as you mentioned there, obviously you need to get your food in, have your sleep, but also have time for friends and family and everything. What do you kind of do to unwind? I think are you a big women's sports fan in general?
Yeah, like I watch a lot of sport, and I think my boyfriend deserves a medal at this stage because he's just going to matches every weekend, all weekend. So I'm lucky enough that he comes with me to all my matches. That is a massive thing as well, that I get to see him even just on the way to a match like it. You know, that's a journey that we get to have the crack on. Then my family, I suppose, I go home every Friday and work from home on Fridays. So that really helps. I spend all day at home Friday, and then I go training for Clare Friday evenings. And then I'm gone again for the weekend playing matches. So they don't really get to see as much of me as they'd like, but at the same time, they understand that I love just being out and about and playing sports. And I'd probably be cracking up if I was at home, and they know that as well.
The lockdown mustn't have served you well, so.
Oh well, I actually had a lot of study to be doing. I was working away over lockdown, so that helped. And I was living with my nana, so the two of us were just kind of trying to go out the back doing stuff or go out for a walk. So it was nice to be at home with her for so long and actually get to spend so much time. So it's nearly hard to leave it when lockdown ended.
Yeah, it's lovely, isn't it? Kind of the unexpected things that I guess came out of it. But as you mentioned there, are you lecturing in Athlone?
Yeah, so I'm in the college in Athlone, in Toos now, I think it's called. So I'm in the sports and health department here. So it's really an ideal blend for me of everything that I want to be doing. Lucky enough, I teach about half of the team that play with Athlone. So
I was just going to ask that. I was like, that must be an interesting kind of dynamic. Like,
yeah, well, like I think I taught Kelsey, Roisin Malloy, Jess Hennessy, Kaylee Shine, Kelly Brennan. Like I taught them all. So that's funny, all right. But at the same time, like when we come in, it's no different to all the rest of the students. I try to just be having the crack with them, chatting to them, and making sure we get the work done at the end of the day. So it's a nice balance and blend. And I suppose the sports students, it's lovely to have that in common with them, that I play a bit as well. So it's a nice way to start a conversation with them, maybe outside of the pure science we'd be doing all the time.
They don't be asking you for assignment extensions then in the training pitch, no?
Oh, they'd be chancing their arm all the time. That Roisin Malloy one especially.
But yeah, as you touched on earlier there, you signed for Athlone now over a year ago, having not played Women's National League before that. Like, what was the draw back to the football for you?
To be honest, this is such a random story, and I'm sure some people are sick of hearing it. But I played with Lifford Ladies at home in Clare for a good while when I was younger. And there's a girl, Ashley New, she's actually with Treaty at the moment, and she'd always text me every year asking me to go playing soccer, and I'd always like, sorry, I'm captain of Clare, can't do it. And I was ready for her this year anyway. I was like, sorry, I've moved to Athlone, I'm not even playing football this year. Yeah. And she said, would you ever go play with a team up there? She'd just be mad to have everyone playing sport. And I was like, do you know what? I actually like to meet people. I'll chance it. And then she texted me and was like, would you go to Athlone Town for a trial? And I was like, what are they? And she's like, they're in the National League. I was like, absolutely no way. And she's like, oh, go on. And then she texted Anto, our assistant manager, and he said, come on in or whatever. And I was humming and hawing about it, and I was like, no way am I going. And it was lockdown as well. I was like, oh, I have no gear up in Athlone, not hope. But I ordered boots anyway. And the door knocked on the Saturday morning, and I didn't answer it, and then it knocked again. So I ran out of bed and I was like, oh God, like this must be what's going on here. They usually just leave out the front. And I answered the door and I took in the boots, and they're like, Laurie, you're in the footballer, is it? And I was like, maybe. And he was like, oh, you're going training at Athlone Town tonight. And I was like, maybe. And I was like just looking at him with a big shook head in me, and then he was like, I'm the manager, and it was Tommy Hewitt at the door. Yeah. And I was like, oh, I'll see you later. And my boyfriend was just dying laughing, be like, well, you have to go now. And I suppose I never look back really after going in that night.
Talk about like I suppose door-to-door service looking for the players.
I was just like, what are the chances that happened to be the boots that I'd ordered to potentially go training? And I was still very unsure about going, because I was like, oh, do you know what? I don't know if I can do it. Like, because actually I'd been so long since I played. I was like, oh, I don't know if I can.
That is absolutely amazing. I actually hadn't heard that one before, even in looking up, but wow, like it's funny how things kind of work out like after it all. But yeah, as you said, Tommy Hewitt is kind of instilling into you guys kind of a new, not even new, but like it just seems to be clicking for this year. And I know you had mentioned before that, you know, it's sometimes tougher to draw players in from other teams, or even like yourself, you know, maybe that hadn't been playing Women's National League before. Do you think maybe that mindset is slowly changing towards Athlone?
Yeah, I definitely think it is. And I think like massive credit is due for the promotion of it. Like I think in the last 2 years it's gone through the roof how much you see about the games, what's going on. Like even hearing the results on the radio, I know it's only a small thing, but like I have an old manager at home in Clare that texts me, heard the result today, well done. Like, and you know, it's just so funny that like he never would have had any interest in soccer before, but now he's listening out for the results and stuff like that. And that has a big part to play in getting girls in and getting them involved. Also the under 17s and the under 19s leagues are massive. Like they were never a thing when I was younger. And I think they really create that pathway for girls to come in and see what the club is like. And like we often do sessions where the 19s will join us, and it's nice for them to get that opportunity to come play with us, or to play against us even in potentially challenge matches. And you need to just create those pathways that allow them to see how professional clubs are, and get them involved and try keep them then. And I suppose that's what we're really trying to do, keep the girls within Athlone and kind of add to it as well.
And even as you say, the 17s and the 19s are doing quite well. I think especially the 17s, isn't it, that for Athlone Town are doing quite well at the minute. But as you say, the treatment has kind of changed in recent years with regards to maybe the media coverage. But like also it's kind of waving towards, it's no longer pay to play anymore, you know, because that used to be the case, definitely. Like,
yeah, like I obviously wasn't really involved in anything like that, but I just think the treatment that we get in Athlone is second to none. Like we're looked after the same way the men's are, and like that's massive. Like, you know, to come in and be like we're on the same pitch. Initially we used half the pitch with them, like at the start of pre-season last year, and my mind was blown. Like I was just like, how are we getting half the pitch and the men's are the other half? Like, and it's just little things like that. Once you see it happening, you know you're an equal in the club. You know you're getting the same treatment. And it allows you to like buy into it as well and be like, Joel, do you know what? They believe in us just as much as the men's team. So that's massive. And it really helps girls to get a bit of confidence about it as well and try push on.
And I think you're definitely kind of garnering the support, especially recently, because I know even I was only watching the stream now at the weekend, the Sligo stream, where you won 5-0, but you could even hear the supporters. They were really kind of getting into it. Would you say that has even come on even in the last few weeks, never mind even last few years? I suppose it's easy when you're winning or something.
Yeah, I know we were lucky enough, like a team played at halftime the last day, and like it was very nice for them. They all came out on the pitch afterwards and got pictures with the girls and stuff like that. So it was nice even for our own girls to have that bit of like appreciation around the club as well. And girls walked out with us from Clara, so we'd like Mount Temple and Clara and with us. So it was just really nice to have that. And I think it's a thing that a lot of clubs are buying into, getting young girls teams in to just be able to see, like, and it's so true. Like if they come and watch the match and get to know the girls and see the faces, that they'll believe that they can be them in a few years. So it was really nice. And even the local support has picked up for us, and like we've always been lucky in Athlone that we've had good support, and the parents always come out and support us too, which is great.
And this is a bit of a random one. I'm not sure if you've even heard of this, but on our show a while back, we had someone come on and rate the kits in the Women's National League Museum of Jerseys, and he actually bestowed the title of #1 to Athlone Town. So I don't know what you think of that, but you have some stellar kits this year anyways.
Yeah, we love our kits, to be fair.
Especially the away one, I feel, got a lot of kind of traction at the start of this year anyways.
Yeah, I think when we did the photo shoot for the launch, I got a lot of likes. Yeah, we love it. I think we personally love playing in our home kit, the black and blue.
That's the one we like too.
Yeah, no, it's a lovely one. It's just very simple, but no, it's lovely, and we all love it. To be fair, and we'd be looking to play with that one whenever we can.
I have two more for you now, and then we'll let you get back to work. But this is a bit of a curveball one too. So as well, to win the All-Ireland with Clare or the Women's National League with Athlone Town, what would be the greater achievement?
Oh God, don't do that to me. I'll be making enemies either way. I think I've been knocking around Clare for 12 years, so it'd be massive for me personally if I could get over the line with that intermediate All-Ireland. But I think for us in Athlone, if we could progress in the next year or two to looking to look for that title, it'd be massive as well. So if I'll be playing or not, that'll be a different story. But I think personally, like we've a goal with Claire this year to try push on and look to win the intermediate All Ireland. And oh my God, like I couldn't imagine doing that, especially when I've been trying for like 12 years.
And you came close before, but on the other side of things, then Women's National League Player of the Month award nomination for yourself for April, and I think it's your second one running, if I'm not mistaken. You had one for March too. How does that feel to have the hard work kind of pay off?
A bit bizarre, to be honest. Like my phone was hopping on Monday morning and I was like, what's going on? And then I saw it, I was nominated again. Like I couldn't believe it the first time. My housemate was with me when I got nominated and I was like, what the hell is this? But like when you look at who I'm up against, it's just like a bit crazy, to be honest. But it's brilliant for the club. Like I'm just so delighted that we're in the club, that we're starting to be recognised, and whether it's me or anyone else making like Player of the Month, Team of the Week, whatever it is, it's just so nice for girls to see that like we're up there with the best of them, and like we have the potential to go on and take results off any team we go out against. And if you start seeing things like that and getting the recognition, it does make a difference then going back into training and looking forward to a bit more as well.
Yeah, Mrs. Consistent, I think I read in the comments there of that one. So I'm sure you'll be looking to bring that into this weekend then. The final one for me, 5th into the table now, just a point behind DLR Waves, and Cork City to come at the weekend. I'm sure you're looking forward to see how that one plays out.
Yeah, I think like we're going down there under no illusion that Cork are looking to get a result off us as well. But like I think I was only saying last night at training, this time last year we only had 5 points. So it just goes to show if you put the work in, like you can improve. And if we want to get that result, we need to go down and put in a performance like we have been. And I say to the girls every day we go out, like if we work hard enough, we will get the results. So hopefully like when we travel down to Cork, it's a long journey for us and for a lot of girls coming far distances. It's hard potentially to go out and play. So hopefully now we can go out and get another result and push up that table.
I know, I'm sorry, I said this was the last time. I'm after being thrown one more by my producer. I've been asked to ask about the dubious, I think it was the second goal on Saturday. Did you see the replay of that one?
No, I did, yeah. Yeah, to be fair, I like at the time I was wondering how it got in myself, but I think sometimes we've been on the wrong side of those decisions all last year, so we were like, finally we got one. And at the time we didn't even realize it. You know, like it was just happened so quickly.
I don't think the other team did either, because
I think like it was literally just like it went into the goal and we were all like, oh, goal, like, and they were like, oh my God, how did that go in as well? Like, but I think, you know what, sometimes you just get lucky, sometimes you don't. And like we had multiple decisions last year where we were like, that crossed the line, and we had like, you know, so they do even themselves out. And I know it doesn't feel like that when they happen, but I think it does. What does go around comes back around to you. And I suppose it's nice to be on the right side of it once, and I think that's what we kept saying as well.
Well, hopefully you have the rub of the green again this weekend against Cork. But thanks a million for your time, Laurie. That was brilliant.
Thanks so much.
Now I'm back again with Breifne to look ahead to the massive clashes we have coming up this weekend, because we have a lot of top of the table meetings as well as derbies as well. So lots to look forward to this weekend, Breifne.
Oh, there's an absolute cracker of a game coming up this weekend. It's first blood, first opportunity to really see them at each other's throats as well. So Peamount Shell's kind of the highlight of the weekend for me, I think. What about yourself?
Definitely the spotlight game, I think they're calling it. But yeah, one you have to look forward to as well, because you know, obviously there's been some drop points now from both sides, but an interesting one to see how it plays out.
Yeah, and I think the fact that they've dropped points to teams that they will be expected to have taken points off, definitely in previous years. Like I said at the start of the year when we kind of previewed the season, I did think Bows had improved and DLR have been improving for the last year or two. Wexford have maybe taken a little bit of a step back, and we'll chat about that later. But Shells and Peamount, they're not as far ahead as they have been in previous years. I think the drain of players to England maybe is starting to creep in a little bit, and it's quite nice to see them. Maybe they won't agree with me. Actually, they definitely won't agree with me. But it's nice to see them dropping points to the likes of Bows, to the likes of DLR. It doesn't really matter that they're rear guard games for both DLR and Bows, that they're kind of holding on, and Bows couldn't quite hold on for the 1-0 win. They conceded that penalty late on, and Steph stuck it away. So it was slightly less of a result for them, but still they'll be quite happy taking a point off Peamount, and they'll gain an awful lot of confidence, as will DLR from 2 weeks ago when they beat Shells. And just that kind of momentum of just, we put it up to one of the best teams in the country, and we were equal to them on the scoreboard at least. I think
you can see how much it meant to them too, especially after the match. They were nearly celebrating as if they got all three, but even just the one was massive for them and reflective, I think, of a good performance from them too.
Yeah, I think so. And even the goal in itself, I'm not quite sure what Lisa Murphy was doing when she headed that ball. I think she headed that ball. It's so difficult to tell, even in slow motion on the camera back, but corner in, and she's got Nemo's come for it. She's got nowhere near it. It's totally uncharacteristic for her, to be fair. And Lisa's kind of moving backwards and just gets her head on it and it just loops in under the crossbar. Yeah. I'm not sure how much she knew about it. I think she meant to get the ball goalward, but she'll be delighted with where it ended up. And she just hit that sweet spot, just too high for the defender on the line. I'm not sure. I think it might have been Lauren Callahan. I'm not sure. Apologies, Lauren, if I put you in the wrong. But just too short to quite get that off the line, and just dropped in over under the crossbar and set them up. They held on. Peamount had 90% of possession. Let's be honest. They had they really did dominate the game and just couldn't score until late on. And it was a clumsy challenge. Steph goes down, gets up, dusts herself off, and buries the rebound, or buries the penalty, and she does that, but we just haven't seen that as much maybe from herself and Anya, despite them still being the top two in the goal scorers charts. It's nice to see kind of teams stepping up and competing and being at that level. But I think this weekend, I did mention Peamount Shells. It's actually Shells Peamount. The game is in Talca on Saturday.
Yeah.
It's going to be an interesting weekend. It's going to be the first opportunity for Peamount maybe to get a crack at Shells after losing the league to them last year. I know they didn't lose it to Shells or with Shells on the day, but they'll be looking to kind of knock on the door and remind everybody that they haven't gone away. They're still in the hunt. They're looking at winning a title this year. Who do I think is the better side? I think Shells, if I'm honest, I think Shells are by far the better footballing side. By far. And I think Peamount, from what I've seen over the last few years, they're very strong, they're very aggressive, they're very attack-minded. Do they try and get it down and play nice little triangles and generate chances? No, they don't. It's very direct. Now, they have the players to play that style, and it's very effective for them. But when they meet a team like Shells, I think Shells will have the majority of possession for most of the game. I think Peamount will create probably as many chances, though, with the style of play they have. And it's going to be a shootout, just maybe to see who can actually make the breakthrough. And I think it could come down, I mentioned it already, it could come down to the goalkeepers. And I think if Nemo makes a mistake like she did last week, that could be enough to get a Shells win. If she has a solid game, and she's been solid for a decade, but if she has a solid game and a good performance from the defence for Peamount, this could have maybe a 1-1 draw kind of feel about it, because there's players on both sides well capable of coming up with a moment of magic. We know all about Steph and Anya up front, and there's others, Sive Doyle as well, capable of finding the back of the net as well there. They're all over the place. The interesting one, I suppose, will be the return to Peamount of a couple of players who maybe haven't been around Pearl Park, or at least facing them for the first time, and that's going to be an interesting challenge as well for a few of the new Reds.
Shells, of course, 3 points ahead of Peamount thus far in the table. Peamount
2 points. 2 points, I think.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I think.
Yeah. 2 points. Right. Every point counts. Every point counts.
It does, especially between these two, and that's exactly what I was about to mention. And then, you have Wexford there in third, maybe having dropped points there again against Galway against the weekend, similar maybe to the Peamount Bows kind of result. Are they kind of too far off the top two already, or is that kind of too early to say? What would you say there? They take on DLR, of course, this weekend. You're
in danger of setting yourself up here to get dogs abuse from fans of Wexford if you say that out loud again. Are they too far away? Of course not. Nobody's too far away mathematically. Can I see them getting back into it? They would need a nice run of games. And we talked earlier in the show about how Athlone had a nice round of fixtures for 3 or 4 weeks that allowed them to build that momentum. We saw it a little bit with DLR earlier, where, no disrespect, but they were playing maybe Treaty and Cork Bohs, Sligo over a couple of weeks, and they had that opportunity to build up that momentum. If Wexford get on a roll, their players are capable of pulling off results against anybody in the league. They can beat any team on their day in the league. They've proved that year after year, week in, week out. The players that they rely on, though, and again, probably not win friends for this, but they're the wrong side of 30, unfortunately, for them at the moment. They're maybe just a half a yard slower than they were 2 or 3 years ago when they were winning leagues and all around them. They still won the cup last year, and I think I'd still make them my favourites to win the cup because they have the head for that kind of one-off cup football. Will they get back in touch with Peamount and Shells? I think I'd be lying if I said I thought they had a chance of finishing the top 2. I did predict earlier in the year that I think DLR will finish ahead of them. I still stand over that. I think DLR had 1 or 2 setbacks this year. I think they lost earlier in the year. Was it to Bohs? They'd have been disappointed with that. And there are opportunities there, but I think DLR will finish ahead of Wexford this year. But it's going to be a really tight battle between the two of them for third place, I believe. I said that earlier on. I still stick to it. I'd like to see Wexford prove me wrong, but I just think there's too much positivity coming out of DLR at the moment for across the board, on the pitch, off the pitch. They just seem to be doing a lot of things really, really well. Wexford, I like them over the years. I love that they've proven that a provincial club can go out and compete consistently week in, week out, can win league titles. We don't see it. We don't see enough of it in the game here in the country. Very Cork and Dublin dominated. And so for me, I say men's and women's game in the country, I'd love to see other provincial teams really step up to the mark and do that. There's no reason why a strong Galway or a strong Sligo Rovers couldn't do that in time with the right environment over the next couple of seasons, really build something positive and strong down there. So I'd love to see, I admire what Wexford have done back in the days and at the start of the National League. They've always been competitive, and I think maybe they're just on that rebuilding phase now. They have a lot of young talent coming through. If they can hold on to El Malloy, she's a huge addition. If they can maybe encourage her to stay local, maybe go to college in Carlow, if that's an option, and stay with Wexford, then what's there in the next couple of years? There could be really, really good positive moves back for Wexford. They could compete for leagues and cups again with her as a kind of taliswoman. Is that a word? Taliswoman in the middle of the park. I think she's a huge talent. If they can hold on to her and get the last couple of seasons out of some of the really good players there, Nicholas Sinnott, Kyla Murphy, Edel, they won't thank me for it, but they are getting on a little bit now. They have a couple of years left. We've seen what seems to be a shift in the goalkeeping position. Keith Gray, who's been a stalwart for them, seems to have lost out in that battle at the moment now to Maeve Williams, who's been very solid in the nets for Wexford. So we'll get to see what happens over the next couple of weeks. But of course, initially they're more worried about this weekend, and of course they have a big game this weekend too. I just lost the run of it here, but they're in action this weekend. They host DLR Waves. So like I said, that's a third and fourth place position. I fancy DLR Waves to win that, but I wouldn't be surprised if Wexford do hold on for a draw in that game. And any given week, Wexford could win that, but I just fancy over the season DLR will shade it. But this weekend could be a big marker for that.
And Katie Malone, of course, in flying form for DLR, so they'll be looking to get her in tip-top shape or form again come this weekend. But Sligo Galway, then, do you consider that one a derby? It's a bit like Sligo Rovers.
100%. Yeah, absolutely. And it's the closest that I suppose the player dynamics would probably give Sligo Athlone a bit more bite to it. But I think Sligo Galway, two Connacht teams, they're in kind of territorial. They're used to each other from a Gaelic standpoint as well. Some of these girls would know each other, having played Gaelic against each other, whether it's for Galway or Mayo against Sligo, or there's not really too many from each involved in Sligo at the moment. But you mean they'd be very familiar with each other as individual players and athletes across a couple of different codes, mostly I suppose ladies Gaelic, and I think it's going to be an interesting battle. I think Galway will probably be the stronger of the two sides. Home advantage might be something if they get a good crowd in the showgrounds on Saturday afternoon. It could be a really good atmosphere. And I've been to one or two of the women's games down there now, and they've really put in a big effort to match to match the girls with the men's match night experience. Okay, it's the middle of the afternoon on a Saturday, but they have the same PA guy. It's the same quality of a program. The pitch looks, well, there's been a lot of criticism of the Showgrounds pitch. I'm not going to weigh in on that, but
it's not different though.
I know, but it's the same. Yeah. It's the same basic canvas that the teams get to play on, if that makes sense. And so I think that's key. And we talked about it earlier in the show about Treaty and Cork. You kind of get the feeling sometimes, and maybe even Athlone to a certain extent in terms of what's around them, maybe not matching up to the men's side. I don't get that feeling from Sligo. I really feel like they've really pushed the boat out, to be fair to the club. And I was involved when they first mooted the ideas of women's football down there. They weren't necessarily that keen on it at the time. We convinced them otherwise, and there's been a real sea change within the club that women's football is part of the future of the club. And it's so important for female supporters, for female volunteers, for female players particularly, to have that kind of, that, like the 2020 campaign from last year, can't see, won't be. It's vital to have these players. The likes of Lauren Bowles, Emma Hansbridge, Kristen Sample, they've all kind of been making waves. Gemma McGuinness has been in a team of the week or two as well. They've been making waves. But even seeing the likes of Pixie O'Hara coming on and making a couple of appearances off the bench over the last few weeks. I think she started last week in Athlone. So there's young girls, 13, 14, seeing the likes of her getting into that first team, and they'll have that ambition themselves as well. And I think it's been huge for the whole region. Obviously, I'm in the Northwest. You're from the Northwest, although you're based in Dublin at the moment. But it's been really positive, and I think the results have been a bonus. They've definitely been much better than I expected them to be, if I'm being honest. I've been really impressed, probably more so with the improvement since the first game against Peamount. I really feared for them the first week. Now I think they're reasonably competitive in that mid-tier. I'd expect them to go out and get a result against Cork. I'd expect them to go out and get a result against Treaty. And then on their day, at Galway, at Bows, and at Athlone, even though they got beaten 5-0 there last week, I think they're takeable, if that makes sense. That there could be a result. And Galway won't want it to be this week. Galway would fancy themselves as being a step above where Sligo are. And it's a real banana skin for Galway. It's a real no-win situation for Galway. They're expected to win the game. And if they lose the game or don't win the game, it will be seen as a really backward step. They've had 4 or 5. Yeah. No, they've had 7 or 8 years in the league. They have players of genuine international experience and quality, and Julianne Russell and others. They'll be expected to win that game. There's all the pressures on Galway. It's an absolute free hit for Sligo. I don't think they'll get close enough, though. I think we could see a 2 or 3-0 victory in the end. It depends on availability. Last week, Emma Hansbridge went off injured 2 weeks ago, didn't play last week. She was missed. And she's maybe not as mobile as she was when she was at Wexford half a decade ago, but she is key in terms of the experience she brings, settled head. The girls around her play quite well around her as well. But with Emma Doherty in that side, I think she's one of the most naturally gifted players I've seen in the league in recent years. And she's always capable of generating a score. Kristen Sample doesn't make many mistakes. She does the basics really well on a lot of the stuff, and they're not going to concede too many goals. So, yeah, I fancy Galway, but I think I wouldn't be surprised if Sligo maybe got a 0-0 or a low-score draw out of the game.
Yeah, and finally then we've Cork City at Athlone looking to continue that streak, obviously, and then Treaty against Bows, which is 8th place 10th. Now he said maybe that's in the table, it's a bit misleading at this point, but chances for all those sides really to get some vital points on the board.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, like, Wexford are in 3rd place at the moment, Athlone in 5th, but if Athlone win at the weekend and Wexford don't, they're ahead of them now with permutations, because DLR would have to win and they'd still be ahead of them, but it could push Athlone into the top 4 of the table. I don't think anybody would have predicted that at the start of the year. You have to have them favourites based on form. You can't see Athlone not beating Cork City on form. But then, who knows? You have to travel into consideration. Sometimes player availability. I know we're kind of getting into the championship season. Athlone have a couple of players who are dual players. Although I think, for the most part, maybe Laurie aside, soccer would be their preferred choice, and the Gaelic is when they're available. I think Laurie is probably on the flip side of that. She's Clare first and foremost, and the soccer will be when she's available. Although I'm sure she's equally committed to both, but I would imagine if there's a decision, the Gaelic would take preference in that situation. In terms of this weekend, got to look at Athlone. They got to be absolutely walking on air after that 5-0 victory last week. They've had 3 wins on the bounce, and all the good things come to an end at some point. I just can't see it being a Turner's Cross on Sunday, and I think Athlone will probably edge it. I'd expect them probably to run up somewhat of a score, maybe 3-4-0, provided they bring their shooting boots with them. They have the players to do damage up front now, particularly against teams that are below them in the table. And I think I don't think Athlone, as I said, will finish in the top 4, but I think they could be there on Sunday evening, and they won't care where they're going to finish at the end of the season. If they're sitting in 4th place on Sunday evening, they'll take it, and they'll worry about where the next 3 points are coming from. But at the moment, I think hats off to Tommy Hewitt. I don't necessarily like the style that they play. If I'm honest, I talked about P-Match earlier. I'm not a big fan of how they play the game either. They're very direct. It's very robust. But you know what? Sometimes it's all about the result, and if you're getting the results, fans and sometimes even the players don't necessarily care how you're doing it. And at the moment, Athlone are doing it. Fair play.
Yeah, it's definitely all ahead of us this weekend, and I'm sure they won't mind, as you say, how the result gets there, but just to get it over the line in the end. But thanks for coming on, Breifne, anyways, and for your production as well.
Well, before we let you go, obviously, we better, I suppose, give you a big thank you, because I don't know if you want this publicized, but I'm going to do it anyway. And you've been here since the start of the year. You were a delight to work with over the last 10 weeks. Thanks so much for coming on board. But now, unfortunately, you're leaving us. You've got an opportunity, I suppose, from a career standpoint, to go and do a bit of work with one of our competitors. I don't even know if they even know we exist, but off the ball, of course, with News Talk and 98 FM and off OTB and all that stuff that any sports fan in the country will be well aware of it. So I know you start an internship with them next week, so we won't have you anymore, which is disappointing. So the very best luck to you in Off the Ball Towers, and I hope you enjoy it. And don't forget us, and if you want to come back, drop us a line and we'll sort something out.
Oh, definitely, and the experience was invaluable as well. But I won't be wavering from the women's national league just yet. Don't worry.
Absolutely, and listen, I'm sure our paths will cross in the future as well. So the very best of luck to you, and hopefully we'll see you on our TV screens or radio airwaves or whatever over the next few weeks and months and years. I'm sure we haven't seen the last of Alanna and the Women's National League coverage. So thank you very much for everything you've done for us over the last year or so. Thank you very much, Breifne. And thanks to you at home for watching, of course. Be sure to drop us a like or give us your feedback at finalwhistle.ie as to who they should get on the show next. Thanks as well to Laurie Ryan, and as I said, Breifne for the look back in the preview as well as on the production and all of the opportunities too. For now though, I've been Alanna. This has been finalwhistle.ie's Women's National League show. Good night.